All right, everyone, welcome. This is a special episode today of Cannabis Live, where we're talking about some big news today. You see it right there up on the screen. I'm gonna have some articles up on the screen today, and we're gonna be kind of talking through the news. But I just want to put it up there. So this is Marijuana Moment, and they say the DEA agrees to reschedule marijuana under federal law in historic move following Biden-directed health agency's recommendation. So this is some pretty big news, and JR and I thought it'd be fun to just get on live real quick on YouTube and start talking about it. I've got the live chat up on my screen, so I'll be looking for your comments. So what's up, everyone, on the live stream? We've got a good crew already in the live stream, so it's cool to see you guys all in there asking or just commenting. Say hi, everyone. Good to see you guys. So yeah, JR and I are gonna talk through this. If JR has some technical issues or whatever, just bear with us. His computer has like a demon in it today, so we'll see.
Woke up angry, folks. I woke up angry.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm gonna jump over to this article real quick and just kind of hit the headlines real quick, and we'll kind of get into maybe our interpretation or just some thoughts on it. But I wanted to kind of start this video real quick where we talk through what exactly happened here. So essentially, going over this Marijuana Moment article, the DEA has made a historic decision agreeing with the health agency proposing to move marijuana from Schedule 1 down to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. So this would change, obviously, a law that's been in place, or a decision that's been in place for the last 50 years. So a couple things that I want to highlight as well here. So there's still more to be done. Next step is in this kind of rescheduling process is goes before the White House Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. They're going to review the rule. And then if they approve it, then it goes to public comment. So I don't know how that works exactly. If like the White House or something like that's going to have a website up where you're going to be able to like submit comments. And then after that, I think is when the White House can then decide, one way or the other, if they're going to go forward with this rescheduling. So a couple details there to hit, obviously, is like, just because this DEA is recommending this doesn't mean it's happening like right now. There's still some process to be played out through the next handful of months or something like that, however long this will take. So I wanted to hit that. Any comments, JR, before I move into kind of like the next article or two?
Well, I would just like to say that I think a lot of this posturing is due to the election cycle. We all know this was a huge promise by the administration. We know that our legislative system is stagnant right now, except for they somehow got the ability to vote on TikTok, but we won't talk about that. Anyway, so that whole process is stagnant. So this was their only way to be able to deliver on this promise. And so we had enough of our representatives get together and put enough pressure. And, with what the, health organization making their recommendations, all these recommendations are putting pressure on these folks to do something about it. And obviously, we're all concerned about how things are going to play out, but I mean, at the end of the day, the cat's out of the bag, and I find it unlikely that jurors are going to convict anyone over a medicinal plant. So that's kind of
Yeah.
my take on it.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna highlight a couple more things, and then I'll also mention, since this is an impromptu live stream, I've got a baby behind me drinking a bottle of milk. So if I randomly have to tell JR to like stall while I deal with baby stuff, just please bear with us. But anyway, real quick, like I said, I kind of moving over to this article, I wanted to highlight that it says, obviously, that this does not legalize cannabis right away for recreational use or anything like that. And a couple other details before I wanted to get into like one of our friends' kind of interpretations of it, but before I do, I'm gonna have to fix my little buddy's bottle, and I'm gonna throw it
Good.
over to
Because
Jr.
yeah,
to
I'll
give
rant a little.
your
I'll go ahead
thoughts.
and
Yeah.
rant about that a little bit because at the end of the day, we still need to be very mindful of how our local law enforcement feels. Regardless, I mean, if you think it's a moment where you're just going to step out on your front porch and start puffing down, be very aware that the local law enforcement still has the ability to make your life miserable. And so we still want to be mindful of that as we kind of start moving forward with this. And so we put together some basic talking points or just kind of a list of things that we're going to run down and just kind of give our take on it. I'm pretty uneducated about a lot of things, so it should be fun. Sam will kind of try to keep me in line here, but one of the first things we're talking about is prescription availability and the availability for your doctor to make recommendations. That's a huge thing right there because their hands are tied. They can lose everything if they make even the wrong recommendations and they get reported. It can make their lives really hard. So if this frees them up with the ability to say, "Hey, this could really help you out if you do this, that, or the other," it frees them up to be able to make recommendations and then also come up with all their pharmaceutical concoctions that they'll be running ads on TV for.
Yeah, I would say like if we kind of just flip real quick to like what the fuck does this mean basically.
Yeah,
It seems like I haven't read stuff that's like super definitive on exactly what it means. I imagine those details will start to come out as people actually kind of try to figure out exactly what this means and how it plays out, because I think the big question is how does this interact with the states? I personally can't imagine they're all of a sudden going to say F you, however many states, what is it, like 30 something states at this point or something like that. We're going to disregard whatever laws that you guys have passed, and here's our new thing. I doubt that that's going to happen just because it feels like that would piss off way too many people and be way too complicated.
yeah. And we're
Um,
going to talk about that down below when we get into states' rights, because I think states' rights are going to play a huge factor. If you look at the way prohibition fell down with alcohol, we still have dry counties and dry areas in our nation today. So I think states' rights, once we start getting into that, is definitely going to play a big role in what our access is.
Yeah, it seems like the big winner here is, at the end of the day, the big winner here is going to be big business. Let's be real. There's going to be a lot of businesses that benefit from this, not just big businesses. This will benefit other, smaller businesses or whatever, because essentially what this will probably mean is that cannabis businesses will finally be able to benefit from 280E tax write-offs or
Hmm.
whatever the
Yeah.
situation is. So,
Yep. Yep.
basically taxes will become less complicated, and a little less onerous, a little bit less onerous than they have been to date. So that's a benefit. At the same time, this is probably the start of that process that will essentially end up in the result of big companies moving into cannabis, because this is just
Absolutely.
another like barrier. They don't want to mess with
Barrier.
cannabis at
Right.
this point, but once the DEA does this and all these other things, because essentially moving it to Schedule 3, right, is Schedule 3 is essentially like some other prescription drugs that you get. You have to get a prescription from a pharmacist. You have to go get it at a pharmacy. So there's moving it to the schedule it's still going to be like somehow regulated. And
But
again, all those details we also have to kind of figure out what that's going to mean.
yeah, and that doesn't mean that, you're not going to be able to have access to flour or you're not going to be able to have access to it. What I think that means is the pharmaceutical companies will now be able to do isolations and creations in their realm of things they do to provide their pharmaceutical solutions for all the things that the plant has to provide. And at the end of the day is the cat really out of the bag? Are they going to be able to, what kind of enforcement is going to be behind someone trying to heal or deal with their arthritis, because they have some pharmaceutical laws. I think a lot of people are scared about this whole move because they say, oh, it's just going to hand everything over to big pharma. And they're right about that point, but they're also got to consider, at that point the cat's out of the bag. And like I said, they're not going to be bringing in convictions for people trying to deal with their pain and suffering, whether whatever that may be. So I think a lot of the fear and the hysteria about it, is going to kind of wane down over a little time as people start seeing. Like, I talked to Tiki earlier the day, and he's like, "Hey, for me, this means I'll be able to operate in the United States the way I can operate in Canada." And if we look at how everything is kind of shook down in Canada over the last, what has it been, 5, 6 years that they've been going full on legalization like that. And so it's going to start looking at these other topics that we're going to kind of cover as we move down the line.
Right,
And I think
right.
the next one is research opportunities. And you can go ahead and start if you'd like to talk about that a little bit, Q.
Sure. I mean, I guess, I mean, the main comment I was going to make on that point is, or I guess I can make, and maybe I'll throw it to you, because I did want to highlight another thing, a comment from a guy that we know, a friend of the show, the Plant Stable. I thought it was interesting to kind of read
Yeah.
his perspective on things. But but yeah, I mean, like JR was just saying, obviously it opens up to big pharma or any sort of pharmacy, but it also opens it up to research so that we will be able to actually further study. You'll have I imagine there's a lot of institutions that haven't even fucked with weed at all yet because they take like federal grants and things like that, and if they mess with marijuana, then all of a sudden they lose their grants and stuff. So anyways, when these sorts of things get taken down, it's gonna open up to more research, which is great.
Yeah,
I'm
because in
gonna
the past, before we move on, in the past, all of this money that was used for research was them trying to research ways to dam it, destroy it, to make it ill to our society. None of that money was ever used to research it for the benefits of our society. And now that we are opening that up, we'll start seeing them, the colleges and the universities and these private institutions will be able to start working towards solutions instead of trying to, make a situation worse.
right. Yeah, so I brought up the Plant Stable. If you're not familiar with him, he's a breeder. We just had him on the show like a month ago or something like that, so you could check that out. But he's a breeder. He also recently was running like dispensaries and grows. So he's been on, the corporate side, so to speak. So I was just gonna kind of read his perspective, real quick. He says, so the DEA says they are going to reclassify cannabis to Schedule 3. It won't go into effect immediately, but it should help with some banking, maybe. It will not legalize cannabis for recreational use. You will more than likely have to go to get a prescription. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think
Yeah.
that's his perspective. Um,
Yeah.
he goes on, in my opinion, this will ramp up the giant corporations, pharmaceutical companies to start dumping hundreds of millions into infrastructure. To be honest, it's probably worth making investments into certain publicly traded companies now, as some of them are about to see a big spike. If cannabis is going to be Schedule 3, then I'm imagining dispensaries will need to register with the DEA like pharmacies do. I highly doubt the DEA could handle registering all the dispensaries currently active in the United States, so that doesn't seem realistic. If cannabis is going to be considered the same as pharmaceuticals, then I'm imagining you will have to follow pharmaceutical standards of cleanliness and sanitation, which will be impossible for mom and pops to accomplish. So that's an interesting,
Yeah.
perspective.
End of the day, I still think the states' rights and the states' regulations, they'll have their
Their say
federal.
over that.
Yeah, they'll have the end of the day. I think they'll have the say over that.
Basically, maybe the feds basically say like, states, you just have to make sure that it's done like safely and on the up and up, but you
Mm-hmm.
guys have to like figure it out or something, or maybe they'll,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Like every state has its own alcohol policy, what they allow, what they don't allow, how much you could buy, when you can buy. all that stuff will be regulated by your state and local. And that's why I want to shout out, I want to take a moment to talk about, I went to that rec event, and when I go to some of these events, I feel like people think the fight's over, like we're not rallying anymore. But I'm
Right.
telling you, our fight is just beginning. We need to rally and position our local and state governments so that no matter what happens, we can always fall back on our own state rights and start pushing our own agendas and make sure at the end of the day things are going to fall in favor our way. So being active and getting your voice out there is still a very, very important thing. Sorry, Q.
No, I mean that's valid. I think that's especially when we're coming up to the public comment, right? So
Yeah.
I see a lot of public comment. I see a lot of quote unquote public comments on our YouTube or on Instagram or whatever.
Right.
So when this shit starts happening, when they do open up the public comments, send in the public comments. Let them know how this impacts you or your concerns about it. I think these are a lot of the perspectives that I see shared in on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. I see some of the same concerns being shared by politicians, right? So I think it's important to make sure that you call up your senator or whatever, and you can make your perspective heard so that they understand where you're coming from, so that people understand. And what I'm getting at is like the small business side of things. I've seen, you know, public or elected representatives talking about how things like this, if we just move to the Safe Banking Act and legalize cannabis banking, essentially, if we only do that, then we're basically just like helping a bunch of rich people. We're not actually rectifying the wrongs or righting the wrongs over the last 50 years of prohibition. So there's still work to be done. I don't think anyone in this fight is saying that this is one and done. I think a lot of people in the fight are seeing this as like a step. But again, like we were kind of saying earlier, I think it also depends on your perspective of whether this is good or bad. I think for a long
It's never
time,
good.
yeah. Well, I think,
Anytime government gets involved and tries to, regulate and I mean, okay, so there will be good that comes from it, but I think the net, the net of it all is going to be control. It's another
right.
way for system control, and that's why we have people like decriminalized nature on. I mean, let's remind people, this is a plant that grows out of the earth from a seed. I think that people's whole perspective around what it is so crazy because of all the shit that we've been through. So it's hard not to go mad about all the shit that's shaken down. And so I just like just try to remind people to stay centered and stay active in your local scene.
Yeah, I think before I don't have the notes up, so I don't know which point you
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
hit next. But before we do, I guess I'll cue you up on that. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, well, I'm checking out the comments, so keep throwing in the comments on the YouTube chat. It's fun to see everyone's perspective there, and just fun to see everyone's comments. And it was interesting too to see people commenting on our Instagram posts about this. It's just been cool to read everyone's thoughts and perspective on it. I think the main point I was gonna make before I throw it over to you, JR, was like a lot of our channel, we've been interviewing growers and breeders, and I think it's going to continue to be important to have those connections because, like, that's gives you control over your destiny. Once you get those seeds in at your house or whatever, or the clone or whatever, you can now grow your own, and you can share things with friends or whatever on the DL or whatever it needs to be, but just kind of take control of your destiny on that front. And buy some seeds and hold on to them. And also, if you see something that you're really excited about and you care about, go buy it because you don't know if that breeder's going to keep on breeding it in
Yeah.
perpetuity. But anyways, JR, go ahead.
Yeah. So next thing I would kind of like to talk about a little bit is, what is this going to do for all the people who have been incarcerated? You know, all those people right now who are sitting in prison and in jail for especially non-violent cannabis crimes. Are those people going to be freed and vindicated and handed a check for all the wrongdoings they had suffered? Doubt it. But I mean, at some point, it's an issue that we need to talk about. And I've reached out to the Last Prisoner Project, and I would like to get them on here and kind of talk about some of that stuff because, public opinion is swayed. We've got over what 80% of the American population agreeing that cannabis at least has some kind of value to our society. We don't. I don't think America agrees at 83% on anything. So I think we public opinion is a huge thing, and it's going to be crazy to see how that gets spun into our media and into, like I said, our lifestyles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, you mentioned right at the top, and I think we can kind of just reiterate kind of what we're talking about today because we've had some new people join the stream. Someone said, "What the fuck? They pulled the trigger on Schedule 3?" Yeah, kind of actually. Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about today. Is that the DEA? They basically, they've been getting recommendations for a while now. We put out videos when Health and Human Services was putting out recommendations back in what was that, like January, where they were talking about how there's medical uses for cannabis. And so, anyways, the DEA is making the recommendation to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Now, there's still some steps involved. It's not going to be, it's not done. There's still things that has to be reviewed, and then it'll go for public comment, which is what we were talking about earlier, and leaving those comments. But yeah, JR, let's kind of kick off into some of your
Yeah,
topics
I'd
there.
like to go ahead and shoot down into some of the stuff that we'll be talking about, what this could mean for our or for our states
Yeah.
economically, impact of that. And so, with rescheduling, it's definitely going to lighten, hopefully, your local law enforcement's ability to harass and really, give you a hard time. So, a lot of the more progressive states and more progressive cities, what they do is they just make it the lowest priority for their officers. And for like in the state of Oregon, Tina Kotek, she took away a massive amount of the budget for marijuana enforcement in the state of Oregon and put it all towards the fentanyl crisis that we're having. So right now we have very small resources set aside in the state of Oregon to go after people who are, doing crazy shit with cannabis. So I think as we start moving towards these attitudes, I think local law enforcement and law enforcement as a whole will maybe start having to readjust, especially, like I said, if our cities and our communities make it the lowest priority.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth talking about how. So last year, I think it was Biden like did some pardons or whatever, and the nuance there was that Biden's president. His realm is the federal government, and there's actually not necessarily like not tons of people get arrested with weed on the federal government side of things.
For
A lot of the
possession.
yeah, with possession in particular, a lot of those folks are in state prisons. So that's like you got to go like each individual state level and get your each governor to pardon a bunch of people or whatever.
And
So
expungement. Let's talk about
yeah,
that too, because what is the difference between pardon and expungement means that it's getting scraped off your record. And that's very important for employment situations, for, like voting. I mean, all those things are impacted by those sentences that people have had to endure because of a plant.
right. So what was the next
So the
thing you
next
wanted
one
to?
really is the cool part, and we can see some of the Western states kind of flourishing in this. Is the economic impact? If we can really get it to where some of these producing states can move stuff out of their state borders, interstate commerce, that's going to be huge. Uh, to be able to freely send your products, as a business through the mail service without getting your shit jacked all the time. I don't know who that happens to, but you know what I mean?
You're right.
Keep it
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that JR and I were talking about, and it's kind of been a recurring topic on some of our interviews with folks like Huckleberry Hill Farms, is we're moving faster and faster towards a future where the only way that you're going to survive as a grower, at least on the rec side of things and the recreational, legal side of things, the only way that you're going to survive is if you have a brand that people connect with, and you have a strain that really people connect with and people love, or you have connections to some strains. So obviously we've done tons of interviews with Raw Genetics, right, and he grows great stuff. So you're going to need growers that are connected to really quality stuff, and
Yeah.
they make a name for their region or whatever, because if people are you're going to have intrusions from big business coming in and all these other companies that are just going to pump out shitty weed, and on that side of things. And so you're gonna, and then there's also the potential of interstate commerce, right? So cannabis could be grown in places like Oregon and California, and then exported to Vermont or whatever it is.
Wherever, yeah.
Yeah, Arizona. So that's a big change. I think there's cool opportunities there, right? I think the obvious example that we always compare to is the beer industry. So over the last 20 years, you saw craft breweries explode. It seems like every town has a brewery in it, or at least every kind of mid-sized to larger sized town has a brew pub type thing in it. Could we get to a point where cannabis is kind of like that? I feel like that there's potential there, but obviously those are different sized businesses as well. You have to kind of
Well,
set your sights appropriately.
and I think like while we're talking about state businesses and state economies, just events, having spaces where people can go. I mean, imagine this will blow your mind. What if you could go to a place, you could buy the weed, you could sit down and smoke the weed, then you could go into another room and buy all the shit you need to grow the weed, and then go into another room and look at all the genetics, pick out your plants, and go home and grow your own weed. I mean,
Right.
all of that could be centralized into a community center. All these things could be potentially awesome. But like I said, we have to fight for that because
Oh,
those are
for
the
sure.
things that are going to be determined by our local states. But I mean, what about me? Like, I love slinging clones. I like getting clones all across America. I would love to be able to do that in a legal framework. I would also love to be able to go to my farmer's market and connect to my local people, tell them
100%.
about the plants that I have and how I can help them. Like, hey, this Georgia, it'll help you sleep, or hey, this Paloma, this is like coffee in the morning, man. It'll get you going, or just whatever. All those opportunities may come of them as they're now being pressured to drop their scheduling, because schedule one was absolutely um, a war on the people. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you could see how their efforts came about when they were trying to make the plant not exist in their country and penalize their people. End of the day, it just ended up demonizing them and validating and making us victorious. And so that whole impact of us being able to move in our own states, get stuff out there, I think that whole thing is hopefully something that we'll be able to fight for in our local communities.
Yeah, for sure. There's looking at some comments that came in. Jay Hine, they made the comment: alcohol is not a controlled scheduled drug. I think it's a fair point. Obviously, this is um, more complicated, and so I guess we don't want to underscore that. There's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
a
no,
lot of
yeah,
details to be
right.
sussed out, because this is weird. If you look at it, and isn't this the same schedule as Ritalin basically, or
Or like codeine,
yeah, stuff like that. So it's
Viagra. I mean, there's no shortage of your abilities to get Viagra.
yeah, so I'll have to look up the
But
Ritalin.
no, I mean, not to discredit what he said because it's very, it's very valid. But at the end of the day, me in Oregon, I can go to a store and I can buy weed of all kinds, and I can come home and I can smoke it. Why? Because my state has fought for the right to do that. So I think if the feds move in and they start saying, "Oh, hey, you can't have dispensaries," or "Hey, you can't do this," I don't think that's going to fly with the states, and it certainly isn't going to fly with the people.
Yeah, and well, and then the extension of that is I don't think it's gonna fly with all of the politicians that have been fighting for this. Because let's be
Mhm,
real, most of the politicians that are probably for this are
mhm.
mostly for it for the money.
Yeah,
The
end
money
of the day,
resides, like
somebody, yes,
they
go
either whether it's they want the tax income, right,
mhm.
or or someone owns a cannabis business and donated to their campaign, or both, or whatever it is. Like they want money out of it, so I doubt they're going to be like, oh yeah, let's change the schedule and then fuck the entire industry. Like I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but again, the devil's in the details, and this is where we have to make public comments when they open it up to public comment. And it's worth making your voice heard and calling your public representatives, calling your senator, calling your House of Representatives people, and let them know your story and let them know why this matters to you. Because this stuff, it's really easy when it's like, when it's just some, I don't know, random story that they can't really internalize. But when they hear one of their constituents tell them why this is important and why this impacts their business or impacts them and their ability to procure medicine or what have you, I think that helps them be more informed, or they can have that story weigh on their conscience, I guess, when they're making their decisions.
And the other part of that I wanted to talk about is safe banking. Access to financial institutions and access to financial services, credit card processing, all of that stuff hugely impacts the our community's ability to have access to our people. Those economics could be small business loans. They could be a lot of things because right now, I mean, we all have heard the story of the guy who's got this great SOP. He's been doing it. He goes legal beat and he takes money from a source that maybe isn't in his best interest, but it's the only way that he could get the money to launch his dream. How many times has that gone and fucked our guys, you know?
Right.
So now these guys might have an access to go to a small business loan and get a decent opportunity and pay a corporate tax rate that every other business pays in America. So that part of it I hope shakes down as well. But then the other thing is will we have the legal right to really start unionizing? I would like to start seeing that. I would like to see the power of cannabis unions start getting established from state to federal.
That's an interesting topic. You've been reaching out to Elliot from Catalyst. If you watch any of Elliot's videos, he's extremely anti-union. Um, his arguments essentially boil down to like I think one of them is that the main union that represents a lot of the cannabis workers here in California, at least, I think it's UFCW, which is like the United Workers. They're I think forget exactly. They're like work in restaurants or something like that. I forget.
Yeah,
It's
for
like
us,
some,
we're with the grocers union.
yeah, it's something like that. So it's like some adjacent, but not obviously not the cannabis union.
Yeah.
So I think there's that's an interesting argument at the very least. I don't buy the whole complete anti-union argument. I personally believe that we need unions, and are that workers would be better off in many industries if we had more unions. But anyways, that said, I think it would be nice to see some cannabis unions at the very least, so that they can fight for cannabis workers' rights in particular, and also maybe they're going to be better at keeping other contexts or things in mind when they're kind of negotiating with cannabis businesses. I don't know. Maybe they'll be like more familiar with the business that they're actually like working with.
Well, also, I mean, especially if we could really have cannabis-based unions that are truly cannabis unions for the workers. I mean, there's a lot of workers in our industry that really get hosed. I mean, they're very low paid. They're worked like dogs. Sometimes their hours are all over the fucking place, you know? And I know that's a threat to the way a lot of us do business, but at the end of the day, some of these guys, I mean, Jesus Christ, you know, they need something, you know?
Well, big businesses are ruthless. I mean, we see it every day. Big companies will use you for years and then they'll lay you off the next day once they decide they don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's why, unions can help. But anyways, kind of moving on. Did you have any other topics that you wanted to hit on?
Just how it impacts healthcare one more time.
All right.
Just like for healthcare integration in your state and local areas. I mean, I know that like in Canada, they're providing alternative clinic and therapies to help get people off of fentanyl, heroin, and all the above. If we could start having RSO clinics set up to where we could start helping people transition off of opioids, those kind of services could be huge to our communities. And that, you know, something like this may also give us the flexibility to start doing some of those things. And I would think those would be net positives for our community.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You just made me think of all the services that a pharmacy provides in its community. When you have like a nice kind of like community pharmacy, I was thinking of the times during COVID where the local small pharmacy, they were giving free shots to people, and there's all these services that a pharmacist or a pharmacy provides. And so now cannabis is going to be in the mix in that, and so it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself.
Well, we can see how this kind of shake down because Pfizer already put in a huge buy-in, or was it earlier this year? Or no, it was late last year. They already had put in. I don't even know if it was in the B words or in the multiple millions of dollars for some pharmaceutical applications already with cannabis. So all that shit's already shaken down with those dudes. And the pressure for large grows is going to be huge. And that's going to be a big fight for us. They're going to want to come in and glass house us.
Oh yeah,
You
the
know,
Glass House guys are already celebrating on Twitter like mad
oh,
right
I can
now.
imagine they got a boner, like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
crazy.
they are fucking crazy. If you don't know who we're talking about, Glass House, I'm not a fan personally.
Not a
Essentially,
fan.
what they did, they're down in Santa Barbara, and they bought literally the biggest greenhouse in the world. And they bought essentially down in Santa Barbara, which is like north of LA on the coast. It's really nice weather, like perfect weather. Anyways, a lot of these places they were growing tomatoes or other plants like that, and so they're converting massive amounts of these greenhouses into weed greenhouses now, and they're cranking out more weed than the entire state can smoke. You know what I mean? And because they've been gearing up for this sort of situation where they can just start knocking out all those greenhouses, convert all of them from tomatoes into weed, and then just ship all the weed across the entire state. And they've got the capacity to supply the entire country or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like that's what they want to get. And so to your point, JR, we need to look out for those sorts of folks. Support your local growers. Um,
Yeah, always
can
support your local growers.
Yeah, connect with those local small businesses, advocate for them, and tell some friends about them. You know what I mean? I'm the type of person that likes to spread the word about something that I like. I think more people should do that. I'm not trying to say that to pat myself on the back. It's more that just like if you like something, if you like a brand or whatever, if you're buying in the legal market, or if you're a grower and you like a specific brand, give them a shout out or whatever, because a lot of folks are struggling right now, and especially if you
Yeah.
know that they're a smaller business, like our friends at Recharge or whatever it is.
Yep, yep, yep. We got a long list of friends that are really show us support so that we can do things like this, get the word out to people, and have a platform for our community. Me and Q try hard to represent everybody from the people who put the seed in the ground to the smoke in the air and everybody in between. I mean, we all live in spectrums, right? So we've got everyone that we want to represent and get our voices out. I know a lot of us, or I know a lot of our listeners are, really want grow talk, grow talk, grow talk, but there's more to the conversation. Cannabis brings a lot more to the conversation, and then we throw my love for fungi in there, and it's all over the place. But the next thing I wanted to talk about, Q, was this impact on our indigenous communities and the reservations of our nation. What is this now going to mean to them, and how are they going to be able to open up business opportunities and flourish under this maybe new writing of the rules?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but yeah, think that's an interesting question that I hope we can like. Did you have any thoughts on that? I don't know if you had find
Well, I
anything in
just
your
know that
research.
when we did the farm bill, we had the indigenous and the native. They were not allowed to participate, you know, and so then they had to fight for those rights. And then I think over in New York, the reservations there, they were able to start, setting up shop even before New York went fully legal. And so I think, like for us here, if we want really good fireworks or we want cheap cigarettes for the people who smoke, you go to the reservation because you get those cheap, So, and unfortunately, and I'm not a huge proponent for gambling, but you can do whatever you want. But if you could just look at what the gambling industry has done for the native communities as far as money, which I don't know that's what is the answers they need,
Right.
but you know what I mean, philosophically. But in the reality of it, this could open up a whole huge opportunity. I mean, if my local Canita reservation was a cannabis friendly reservation, book me a ticket. I'm there.
Yeah, one of the things. So, Jay Hine in the comments. I'm not sure who they are, but they make comments as if they know what they're talking about. So I'm taking it a little bit more seriously. But they said Schedule 3 will require cannabis to be purchased via pharmacy, but a script is not needed due to Title 21, Chapter 1306.26. So that would be interesting. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that rolls out. Like, are they going to
Yeah.
have like your CVS's and Rite Aids, are they going to have your probably like super low THC, CBD,
Well,
and THC strains or something, and then you'll get the more heady shit at the dispensary?
did you see what Canada did? Is they tried to irradiate all of the product, so everything was mold free and pathogen free. So they started delivering this federal weed that was terpless and trash. And so there's open market, like I like to call it, the open market flourished and took off in abundance. And so then their fight back was to start hammering down on their medical dudes because those guys could grow 100 plants or more. Some of them, I think, I know for positive they could. And so they started going after those guys to put the squeeze on the open market. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that play with us here. Um, I I'm certain there's still going to be kicking down doors, and I mean, if you're doing dumb shit, there's a good chance you're probably not going to escape any kind of harassment by these dudes.
Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting point. Is there's been a recurring conversation around this lately, that is a lot of the illegal weed that's being grown right now in big numbers is actually being grown by like Chinese nationals and stuff like that are basically making money to ship back to the homeland, because like China needs to make money through a bunch of random different ways, and so to prop up their economy. So anyways, I wonder. So that's been coming up. at a federal level. Like I know senators and House of Representatives have been talking about it. They're worried about it from like a national security perspective. So I'm curious how that'll roll out with this kind of change. If it's there, I imagine. I kind of feel like this is probably going to head towards a direction where if you're doing that kind of stuff, they're going to gear up to really go after you
They are.
and
They
just
are.
say like you're really
They are.
fucking up royalty,
They are.
royally.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if you look at the amount of arrests that happened for cannabis in the state of California last year, it's a pretty astronomical number. I'm really terrible with numbers, so I won't even say one, but it was a lot. And so I don't think that those days are over. But what I do see being um, a thing that's going to be a challenge is getting a jury to convict. Getting a
Yeah.
jury to convict on cannabis, you're going to have to paint these guys out to be super assholes. And so the guys that are diverting streams and leaving trash, those guys are going to start now dealing with all the environmental agencies. And so now they may not be able to penalize you criminally, but
Right.
they'll come into your farm and they'll make sure every drip of water is going where it's supposed to go, and you're doing everything exactly how you're supposed to do it, or they're going to find the hell out of you and take your farm. So
Right.
that shit's going to be a reality too. And so all that stuff is more stuff we're going to have to navigate. And if we've got these cartel grows in our forests and they're fucking shit up as a society, are we down with that? I personally am not down with that. So then who is it in the hands to deal with that?
And how do you deal with it?
How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And when these people use human trafficking for labor,
Exactly.
and you're living in horrible conditions, and in this case of Oklahoma, we had 5 Chinese nationals get shot execution style on the grow. And the grow was quasi legal. I think a couple of the greenhouses were legal, the other 5 or 6 weren't. But the point is this is a real problem that we're going to have to face because of the money that's attached to the product.
Yeah.
And
No, I
and,
agree. Yeah.
and if we want to kind of move on to another topic to get away from the horrifying truth of that, we can maybe talk about international treaties and how we've impacted our entire globe with our stance on cannabis regulations and how that has impacted the southern nations and the South America and everywhere else.
Right. Yeah, like a lot of people bring that up. Um, like, oh, if the US changes, like they're going to be out of step with the UN or whatever, but it's like the UN made their laws based on or their rules based on the US, right? Cuz everyone we're still the number one economy in the world, right? So people look to us on this kind of shit cuz they don't want to be out of line with our drug policy or whatever cuz that I don't know if that would mess up their ability to trade with us or whatever. So the point is they look to us with that stuff. So hopefully, now that we're making these changes, I mean, we've already seen, what was it, Germany just legalized like a couple of weeks ago or something? It wasn't that long ago.
April 2nd.
Yeah. So things are changing, and
Well, I thought they should have waited till the 20th.
yeah, exactly.
They really screwed the pooch on that one.
I know they can never get their timing right. Same thing with this. Like, why did they wait to leak it on 4/30? Like, you couldn't have done this 10 days ago.
Hey, my thing is notice how it's conveniently right after tax season. Hey, we got you on that income no write off. One last time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one last hurrah.
Right, that's the final fuck you. Hey, I didn't say that. Just kidding. Jokes.
Well, I feel like we've said a good amount.
Yeah, we hammered it.
But before we, kind of dilute the show by other kind of ramblings, I do want to give folks a shout out. We've got a we're going to record a show this Friday with the Soil King. I should be able to get that up like on Saturday this weekend so that you guys can watch it this weekend. So stay tuned for that. That will take place of our kind of normal episode schedule, so to speak. And then we've got more interviews on the way over the next several weeks. I mean,
Yeah,
JR is booking me like into July at this point, or August.
yeah, we're into July. We're into July.
Yeah.
We've got some cool folks coming on. We got some revisits, and but we were going to be pushing some cool conversations. Future 4200 is going to be coming on. I'm pretty excited about that. Super Seed Co is going to be coming in for the Nugs Deep. So that's going to be fun. We're going to get to talk some strain talk and some breeding talk. People always love that one. And thanks to Neptune for the hookup on that one, brother.
Had some funny comments in chat about Soil King. We've had Soil King on one or two times. We had a really great interview with him that we did last fall, I think that was. It wasn't that long ago,
Yeah.
but it's a really good interview where he talks about just the depths that he goes into to make a quality product, and also the fight that he's been through. So we have a lot of respect for Patrick Soil King.
Yeah.
And if you're
He's
a doubter,
been through the ringer, that kid has. I mean,
Yeah,
he has been through the ringer. And if you look, one of the things, I won't tease too much of it, but the way things shook down with that last Imperious show, there's a right way to handle things and there's a wrong way. And I want to just kind of let people remember, whether you agree with what that guy says or how he believes, he did the right thing in that situation. And I think that's an important conversation for us to have.
yeah, he's always really interesting to talk to and super passionate about soil, which I appreciate because we need good soil, and we need someone out there fighting to make good soil. So I think it's really interesting to hear his perspective.
Yeah, I tried to find my daughter-in-law some good garden soil, like 10 cubic yards, and finding good soil is not easy. It's
No,
really not easy in your local area to find a ton of really good soil. And shout out also, we've got Tim from Bio 365 coming on, and we're going to be talking about a bagged living soil that's on the space station. So that's going to be an exciting topic coming up as well. And I was fortunate enough to get enough bags of their soil to do a full run. So we'll be able to see a good side by side in my garden how this soil performs. It's a water only, but I'm going to be supplementing with my little cheater teas of Recharge, Big Bloom, and Insect Frass. So they'll be getting those periodically as water ends as well. To keep my microbe boosts, I'll also be using Mammoth Pea and Flower. I'll be pushing the microbes hard, and we'll see how it does compared to the recipe that I've been running since 2003. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how this goes. But Tim will be
nice,
on to talk soil and space.
nice. I bought Coots mix
Ooh, nice.
from Kiss Organics. I bought a package of Coots mix from him, and then I bought the craft blend from Build a Soil, which is what I've been growing with for the last like few years or something. So I bought both of those because I needed a lot, so I just decided to kind of go half and half, and so I'm gonna experiment with that this year. And I also bought some fermented plant extracts. So I'm gonna experiment with. That's gonna be like my summer project. Is I'm gonna experiment making some gardening videos for Cannabis. So I've got a camera. I've got a microphone, so I'm going to try to experiment with that in the backyard. So stay tuned. I'm not going to make big promises or anything, but I thought it would be fun to try it. I thought it'd be fun to try.
No, you already did, Q. It's going down. We want them videos.
Yeah. I watch a lot of like Epic Gardening, and I don't know. There's a lot like Epic Gardening is really good. If you're a gardener, check out Epic Gardening. I really like his channel. Well, cool. Well, guys, this has been great. We've had like 70 plus people join us on the live stream, which was awesome. Really cool to have all you guys join. And thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you enjoyed this show, we do the live interviews every week. We typically do them on Sundays, Sunday afternoons. So, oftentimes you can join us in our members-only community on Cannabis. Just search Cannabis in the App Store Use the code GrowersLove for 50% off. That's our members only community. I actually have a post in there right now that you can comment on and put in your information, and that enters you into a random giveaway. We send out free stuff basically to our members quite often. So we do like random giveaways. We pick names or people that show up for live streams. We send them stuff. So, I've got a stack of 5 boxes behind me of Lost Coast plant therapy that I'm sending out tomorrow. So join us over there in the community. And then as always, thanks to our sponsors for supporting Cannabis. They help keep us going. And cool. Well, I think let's just wrap up this show. This is a good one. Hopefully it gets people something to talk about, something to think about. We wanted you guys to be informed. There's a lot of FUD, as they call it, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's a lot of bullshit, basically, out there where people are kind of like dooming about this. I think we're kind of like optimistic, but also you need to be guarded, stay informed, and make your voices heard. It's not over.
No, it's not. Cat's out of the bag, but we got to make sure that the cat's, doing things in the benefit of our community and our people. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of us have been through a lot of shit. I mean, let's remind people they kicked in our doors. They took everything we ever owned. They took our children, and then we had to fight to get our children back. So a lot of us have been through a lot of shit. So, I'm glad that we're here standing and the fight isn't over. So stay tuned, folks. It's getting crazy out there.
It is, man. Well, this is cool to do, JR. It was fun to do. We've never done something like this before. It's fun to see everyone in chat. Oregon Bro, Lone Star, Larf, Fruggle Rock, Curly Green Leaf, Cake in a Cup, J. Patrick, Jack Beanstalk, Thomas Cooley, Armith Thor, Hillbilly Herb, Georgia Grow Guy, Pixel Pit. I think that hits a lot of them. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, everyone,
Growers love.
Peace.